Okay, color looks off. Must be the bright shirt I have on, but I can't use the green screen because I want to show some shiny book covers. I picked up a couple books I want to let everyone know about. And these are books if you're into reenacting and living history. I picked these up at Day Battlefield Reenactment last week. And the first one, Seminole War era clothing, Seminole U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, and civilian, compiled and written and edited by James Flaherty. Jim has been into the living history and reenacting for many years. The first part of the book, he took Rick Obermeyer's Seminole men's clothing, and with Rick's permission, he reprinted it here. I've known for Rick for 40 years. He's one of the most generous people I ever know about sharing his research. And Rick had no problem uh, letting Jim publish it here. And then he adds a few photos. Um, the Seminole clothing, it's also a website too. Jim also talks about there's some pictures and talks about women's clothing. Uh, Seminole with women's clothing. If you get down the stitching and the patterns for 1830 women's clothing, then you also get the idea about Seminole women's clothing as well. It's not too different from this original woman's dress right here. And that is, where does it say? Reproduction fabrics. Okay, it's women's dress by Kay Pebbles. Okay. And it also gets into the soldier uniforms, Navy uniforms and clothing. And there's Jim Flaherty on the back. Um, so I think that sells for like $27. You can buy them through the Seminole War Foundation. I think they're on Amazon, but I'd rather buy it from the Seminole War Foundation myself. Seminole War era clothing. So that's a real good, helpful book here. The other book I got, if you're into research and want to know who's who, this is by John and Mary Lou Missall, who have written about 15 books, some mostly on the Seminole War, but also other subjects like Shakespeare. And there's a book about a oil man who spent his career capping oil wells. Really interesting. But this book is His Country Has Called Him, U.S. Army officers who served in the Civil War and Seminole Wars, including a list of those who also served with the war in Mexico. And the cover is by Seth Eastman, who was an officer in the Seminole War. That's a St. John's River. So that's the original 1830s or 1840 painting. If you go through the book, it just gives a short bio of a couple paragraphs on each officer, and it must have hundreds of them. Has a picture if we do have a picture of them. So that's pretty interesting. So if you're interested in wanting to know who's who, then you can just open it up. Here it is. Washington Irving Newton, born in 1810, earned the rank pre-Civil War captain. He's in the Second Dragoons. After the regiment was created, he spent much of 1839 at Fort Payton. That's right. I've seen him on the post returns at Fort Payton. I also think at Fort King. And he has leave of absence because of severe inflammation on the right knee. By 1842, he returned to duty, but on sick leave again in 1844, and commissary officer in San Antonio in 1850, sick for duty again, returned to Texas. So anyway, gives a bio in him. Here's one. John Pickle, born 1799, in the service from New York. There's a Lake Pickett on the St. Johns River, and actually he's the one who's named after. It's just that a surveyor line turned Lake Pickle in Topeka. He was on topographical duty there during the Seminole War. Let's see who else. Henry Hopkins Sibley, born 1816, cadet. You served as Confederate rank of Brigadier General, started in the 2nd Dragoons in the Florida War. And so in the South, he was successful in capturing Albuquerque and Santa Fe, was stopped at the Battle of Goria Pass and forced to retreat in Texas. Actually, I've seen a battle reenactment of Goria Pass. There, that's pretty cool. So, Ethan Allen Hitchcock, yeah, we know him. So, anyway, if you're heavily into research of who's who, this is a real addictive book that you can read at bedtime and figure out who's a famous officer, both in the Civil War and also in the Civil War, Seminole War and Civil War. There. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed this short video, and we'll talk later.